Shelley here with Sirius Dallas Moon. This is Mars Hour Moon Day. And the moon is applying to ingress to Scorpio, ruled by Venus that's in Scorpio. The sun is applying to conjunct with Black Moon Lilith, and Mars is in conjunction with Antares. Let's bring about Antares, and I like the Antares talisman by Renaissance astrology. And what I like about Renaissance astrology, and again, this is only from my viewer perspective, um, is the perception that the talisman is a portal to spirit, and it's basically creating that connection, okay, or tending to the topic, whether it's by astrological charity, as one offers, or invoking the talisman when the ascendant and midheaven are crossing the fixed star. And what is not, at least not what's marketed to us as clients, what is not based on is any type of sacrifice or any type of dogmatic materialism. Okay, we are to perceive the spirit world as such, and we're not to call on spirit by an Aleister Crowley type of protocol, but basically use the time in the election to connect with the planet, perhaps even light a candle, um, read an invocation. And this is a way that is very, very effective. Okay, it definitely tends to the topic of the fixed star. And those of us that work with fixed stars, I know that I noticed every time Beta Perseus minima, I'm going to have a flickering screen that kind of lets me know, hey, Beta Perseus minima today. And that's a good connection. Now, for Antares is protection against evil spirits, good for memory, intelligence, um, the heart of the scorpion. Um, Good to bind bad spirits for those that do such practices. Um, make someone appear wise, a protective shield. So we can call on energy of Antares for the message of this episode. And Mercury is retrograde, bringing about past relations. And particularly with Uranus at the end of Venus sign, particularly it brings the topics that the world needs to tend to so that they can be a relation. Now, for those of you who are dating the other sex, okay, um, just upon dating, one needs to contend with an economy that doesn't really yield resources, um, whether you take somebody on a coffee, even the barista doesn't have a chair, and somebody would have some 17 years old waitress will have back pain that she might not even have enough money to pay the medical bill for. um, Meeting our non-erotic needs. Okay, governments worldwide have agendas to control population, and so much so that certain parts in the world give incentive to rape to have children without care about what will be of those children, because the more mind controlled the children are, the better as per them. And basically, most people will never had reference to meeting our non-erotic needs adaptively, um, before meeting our erotic needs, and to discern and to be grounded enough, um, when it comes to relating. By the way, the couples that stayed for many years together, adaptively, not because they couldn't divorce, which is still an issue today, a lot of them had separate housing, that each owned a different house, and then the relation became more of a relation and less of an extreme form of codependence. Now, I'm not against dependency, okay? We are relational creatures, and I'm not against, okay, I'm not, absolutely not against meeting our needs adaptively. Um, that being said, when everything is stacked against the people, and just to think about the fact that a good relationship supports one another on their dreams and goals, and if somebody does go with the dreams and goals and does achieve something of merit or taps into something of merit, then they have to get themselves informed with banishing psychic attacks, and all types of targeting that would be acting against them. Okay, I just met a person that was kind enough to invite me, um, over coffee, over meal, and as we have a conversation, I see that certain two figures that I absolutely know suddenly take over his consciousness, and he tells me he's doing something with coding or developing and studied mathematics and so on. Um, Now, mathematics is a special thing. Is usually people don't go to mathematics and physics without tapping into things. Okay, it's not engineering of something. It's not something that, okay, that's prescribed. Um, and as we go upon the conversation, um, I see that I was suddenly having something that I dealt with when I tapped into something in my research, uh, and I literally understand that this person may be targeted individual, and I try to bring that up in the conversation in a very tender way. Um, and the person was not even beginning to get what I'm talking about. Either that, or he was already afraid to speak. Um, I don't think he came from like a cult or serving a cult. I could be wrong, but seems like all in all, just a nice person. And just looking at that as something that many people don't even begin to understand that they will have to tackle when they become, when they reach a certain phase in their lives. Okay, whether it's their Pluto square, Neptune square, Uranus opposition, Rahu maturation, where they're embarking on, or they're tapping onto something, and this is a time where people go through things the most. So a lot of even the communication issues or intimacy issues, we live in a world where people had to have a diagnosed medical condition to rest at work. Um, a diagnosed medical condition or severe trauma to not have sex on the third date, or severe religious trauma to go under the guise of, by the way, even in religious societies, people wed after 2, 3 dates. They're expected to decide on the wedding, um, so that they can breed children. Um, it's actually not a lot of people know that, and it leaves very competent men and women in completely dumbfounded when it comes to their relations. It's not our fault, it's by design. Um, Teal Swan addresses the fact that the dating advice that is targeting men and women is by design to cause them to fight and break up with each other. Um, and it goes even way beyond that. Okay. Um, and so we have a situation where people have a conglomerate of human needs that weren't met adaptively, that to meet them adaptively, they need to change the world completely, not even being aware and exposed to the extent of the issue. Um, I remember I met several couples that were trying to conceive and so on, and it came about while I was listening to testimonies of ritual abuse survivors. And interestingly enough, in Netherlands, there is also something kind of like Israel, that it's not unique to Netherlands, but they begin to talk about that, which is tending to the children. And they have ascendant Cancer, so Scorpio is their um, fifth house. And I guess the Black Moon Lilith going through Scorpio and Sun through to the last decan of Scorpio is called cases of children. Both the Effia case that were buried alive with the Dutro case, the Deming coming out again, um, and but even regardless to the colder cases, the topic of the Hague ICC. It is ICC. I thought it's ICC judge being defining themselves as pedosexual. Um, and when we get to the nitty gritty, it is our entire societies that grew into inhumane conditions, and by design, they got praise over evil and torturous death over kindness. So, shit tons of drugs, had their energy as infants, boys and girls and hermaphrodites, taken away from them by ritual to manifest wealth, and then that wealth only being granted to them if they continue with the extortion line and lineage. So they actually believe that they need to take life energy from other people, while in fact it's about unlocking the wealth of the energy that was taken from them as infants. Now, go explain that to people who are busy developing code, seeing that being marketed the safe city. Okay, it's not just being marketed. People, a person who develops a code, who works for a high-tech company, they may complain about the salary, but if they travel to, let's say, Doha or Singapore, they see they can leave their laptop, they can leave, money outside. Nobody would take that safe city. What's underneath, or how many kidnapped people and children, their let's say their social media would not be targeted by the algorithm to even show how many missing people do these cameras not find somehow. Now go explain them that what they're dealing with has to do with all of the esoteric things that I just mentioned. Um, for me, coming from academia, at least I looked into the body mind question. So, but any code and any machine learning or neural network can process data also regarding frequency, and that's an opening um, gate to talk about Gates. And I don't just mean Bill Gates. Um, People that have grown upon Microsoft, Apple, Google being somewhat say, and I'm not even talking NVIDIA, Palantir. Okay, Microsoft, Apple, Google being safe stocks to invest in. Like, they don't see what's coming. Versus digital fascism. Okay, their YouTube won't target them for the lady that predicted digital fascism 30 years ago. They will also not necessarily have the suffice background of how fascism infused technology, brutalism as an art, okay, a stream of the art of brutalism. I remember something from my degree. And um, an extreme a form of seeing the country as a body in which the people were the cells of. And what do we know about cells? The cells rejuvenate all the time. We a lady that clears her face, or a man that clears his face in the morning, use exfoliation, and then washes out, opens the pore, washes out the dead cells, and to rejuvenate the skin. Now, imagine a country having a facelift. Israel is having a facelift right now. There's a lot of dead cells. Um, Many things that even I wasn't exposed to. I remember when I went with a colleague to see if we can get investment on some research, and I came up with a small knowledge about chaos theory in theory, because I'm not a mathematician, and and I say, well, if we can find a point of intervention to balance a chaotic system, then we can find these points of intervention and even prevent earthquakes. That guy lost his melanin in front of my face, and 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 nobody would tell me in academic institution that those things are already being used, but to cause earthquakes. So going back to Feynman, that looked at, and I was a relatively privileged girl because I grew up in a country that replaced hands from the Soviets to the Americans um, only midway into existence, and I don't remember it was at what time, but the residues of the Soviets, particularly for people that lived in the cities, were that women could take on chemistry, sciences, and so on and so forth just as much as men did, and um, not necessarily. Yes, not all good things were not all things were good in the Soviet Union. There's a reason why it fell, but I definitely didn't grow up in a society that didn't expect me to excel in studies and in sports and all Spartan things. So, um, whereas other women, if I look at American women that believe, or even someone who inspired turning my butter, inspired me learning how to do butters that I did learn how to do, but I didn't quite use that. And then I turned them into talismans inspired by Caitlin Kopog. She was thinking about the fact that, hey, if she would be doing something in academic institution, her patents would be protected and so on and so forth. First of all, Richard Feynman got $1 for its patent. He didn't turn it into a business. But secondly, the trafficking codes by Nazi ideology operate in academia as well. What's more likely to be happening is that, God forbid, she would be raped and tortured to have the energy taken away from her so that somebody could come up with that invention under their name as if it was their idea. Um, and those who complain are persecuted. Um, okay, with Feynman being one of the only cases that he caused the psychiatrist to diagnose him because he didn't want to go to the war. Um, but he was already working at Manhattan Project at the time, and he could get away with that. I don't know how many children were sacrificed in the process of that. And probably more than we'd like to think about when we comfort ourselves by listening to our favorite scientists, musicians, philosophers, gurus, and so on. And that would be my Neptune square. Or even business people. So, Mercury retrograde accentuates these topics. It creates those juxtapositions which I was talking about earlier today. Okay? If I do astrology but I don't know the computation, naturally I will be um, more inclined to meet people that are very good in computation, but perhaps are not doing astrology. And even that, I don't know if it is because of the courtesan-partisan division that operates in those who are making decisions over wealth consolidation, thus creating um, a division and a unity that are based on division. Okay, a unity cannot be based on oppression, and an artificial division that is made by terror is also not an authentic stream of consciousness. Okay, it's not an authentic polarity even. So a lot of our neurodivergent attributes are because of this type of wealth consolidation, and people are not even told that that's a factor. Okay, if they don't run into Annika Luka's podcast, then, and usually, why would they? Okay, why would the algorithm pick them? It's not until they tap into something in their work or in their, and they see weird things happening. Um, 11:11 as I speak. Supposed to be light workers. I don't know. A lot of people try to corrupt these numerical passages or portals. Um, so going back and forward to this Mercury retrograde, we are confronted with the fact that by praxis we still tend to attract people. Okay, even by juxtapositions that third parties are interested for two people to somehow mingle so that they can tap into the energy and try to siphon or receive information. Okay, right now there's also a war. I'm covering NATO. Other people could be coming from Russia. um, I don't see myself as of particular religion. Other people might see it differently themselves, even secular. Okay, the secular um, had a surprise during COVID that a person who was totally secular really flinched on me. Something that really came about, like, what the heck? And the fright of women being. A lot of the secret societies are receiving indoctrination of being terrified of women. And again, if you're not doing incubus succubus and you learn how to shield your energy, you should not be worried about that. It's only, very likely I was exposed to that both because of certain astrological significations of where my Neptune is, but also because I came from academia. So I did not learn how to protect myself energetically too effectively. And by the time that I set boundaries, I already had the philosophical inclination to ask a lot of questions, and I began to understand what am I setting boundaries to, and that's not Nazi occultism. Okay, so its inspirations and derivations and what it inspired. So, okay, when people talk about banishing bad gene or bad spirit or whatnot, that's the dumb fuckery that they talk about. Even Black Moon Lilith, okay? I don't have the ability to like summon or invoke Black Moon Lilith and discern whether it is a demonic version, Aleister Crowley, techno sorcery type of entity, or an organic spiritual, um, spiritual entity, and this is why I was susceptible to spiritual warfare, because I just didn't know. Okay, it's just things that coming from academia, we were not initiates, but the people in the secret societies are also not initiates because they are taught those dark occultism, and medicine is offered or healing is offered as bait. And then as they go about their malign spirits journey, they would later be offered to denounce any type of spiritualism, astrology, occultism, and accept so-called Jesus. That doesn't really solve the problems, but it's a better approximation to the red pill they've been taught. Okay, so for a man that was taught that women are looking for a toxic partner, um, meeting a person they can actually communicate with, and honor one another's time and so on, is actually adaptive. Okay, is actually more adaptive than the previous. That person was by design socially programmed to go through some sort of denunciation and be embarking and identify Jesus as healthy relationship without really asking the questions. We had an eclipse on the star that's associated with Archangel Michael, I think in Pisces. So this was not Aldebaran. It's also associated with Archangel Michael on a material level, but this one was associated with Archangel Michael on a spiritual level. And I did have a lot of questions, okay? A lot of things where, as Pisces ascendant, I don't like to outrule things. I love delving into the great vast and allowing possibilities, but also not have those possibilities being what people call false light or spiritual gaslighting. It's that Piscean immersion non-attachment principle that I heard some of my colleagues talk about. Um, so is the world compatible for the living? Because anyway, we would have juxtapositions. Anyway, we would have, person could be um, going out and about and meeting people, or then for a very long time not meeting people. But usually, as we tap into ourselves, okay, if I take an example, person I met um, yesterday completely by chance, they were just, getting their um, um, fitness and studying a new language, or so it's kind of like, hey, when a person is kind of catching up with themselves, then they usually will find that more people are juxtaposed, and it's up to us to understand that our sovereignty is very important. Um, just because what we are setting boundaries to is basically type of wealth consolidation, whether under the guise of regimes or not, or even under the guise of underdoginess. Okay, that's also Aquarian or revolution. Um, does that thing actually provide? Do we live in a society where there can be love, where people can be who they are, and the rules, the wealth, the culture are of cultures that are supporting of love? Um, And to the level that we tend to that, because um, it's way better to know about what's done to children that affects also uh, the effectivity of relational consultation. Um, uh, Better to study that single. Better to learn about it single. But also, if somebody is in the midst, because there are going to be some divorces with Uranus Taurus, and for those that are Scorpio ascendant, there can be some divorces and some marriages. Okay, kind of divorce and marriage. Um, but the things that we are needing to tend to as society, and we understand that there is no, we can pick our battles, but to actually, um, you know, to actually grow, to actually relate, to actually whether grow a family or not. In the United States, you could be some of the wealthy, and by the way, the wealthiest you are, the more the conception, because there are cloning farms at the top. You would think, oh, some people have money to go to a private clinic with this, with that, with a water bath and the best services. Actually, I had a colleague that gave birth in this way, and she needed the medical services and she needed the water bath. Um, it was kind of an integrative medicine birthing experience. And but in many cases, Americans, for example, once the head of the baby is out, is the baby out of the womb? Baby out of the womb? Okay, bye bye. Even no matter how complicated was the birth, and I'm not even talking working class. I'm talking people that have global businesses. Okay, and own the real estate of their business. Okay, something that is people that have. Okay. People that when they get a talisman out, they talk about the time it took because there were families wealth consolidating intergenerational wealth. While I'm talking about the ritual abuse that takes place in wealth consolidation. Of course, those juxtapositions happen at this time for a reason. And then we see that even those families, when they go to birth, no matter how complicated the birth is, I'm talking birth that in some other eras in history, the parent would die at the birth. Baby out of the womb, bye bye. And hey, people that ask me when will I have children, even if they do it in the astral, they brought up this topic. they can't they can't complain now. I actually gave it some thought. Okay. Um, so um, so the notion of we'll have to pick our battles doesn't apply when people actually have to live in the reality of if they picked a certain battle, they have to live in the reality um, that they picked, not to struggle, not to fight to change. So um, and then the people that do change reality, or do tend to change in reality, uh, need to live with the fact that they might cross the birthing window, but hey, that's safer for the children. Or if families are in a certain class, that them birthing children is birthing them to a society that ritually abuses them to make them strong and Spartan, um, but their children will already be sometimes even addicts to something that the world doesn't even talks about at large. The egg of the sovereign girl can't hatch in society today unless we set that unless we set that infant to struggle since infanthood for the rights of the sovereign girl, which means that the sovereign boy also doesn't exist. Um, and the battles we didn't pick usually catch up catch up to us along the way. Okay, the battles that society didn't pick to improve upon working conditions end up in digital death and concentration camps. Is the fact that the person needed to be defined as disabled when they need to rest at work. As holistic health practitioner, I see it all the time. I would teach English. A mother would suddenly have an ailment in her stomach area that necessitated 6 months of rest. That's after she was the backbone and people kind of walked over her. All the while working with neurodivergent children that need excess tending to. Solar plexus, this chakra area, is boundaries. Typhus, I talked about typhus. My grandfather had typhus. Happens usually in slavery conditions. It's an inflammation disease. Inflammation is boundaries, the I am identity, all the rituals that are done to deprive people of identity and ability to assert their boundaries, they cause inflammation on a mental level, inflammation is associated with mental diseases, particularly the ones that border the personality axis, or could be challenging to diagnose and be mistaken for personality or like whatnot. Okay, what do they tell a bipolar patient? You need to sleep well. You need to eat to be well nourished. You need to eat the right food, kind of a Mediterranean diet. Okay, and you need to do things that you love. What on the if those are the prescriptions, what is why do people become bipolar? But they would only get these advices if they already tried the pills. Okay, it's like, hey, the pill alone does not help. Not telling them that the pills interfere with absorption of minerals and vitamins. And I'm being very tender. Okay, with Johnson and Johnson, they gave men boobs. Now, if men wanted to have these boobs, maybe that's nice, but there are side effects. But if men never asked to have boobs, then that's not a desired side effect. And Johnson absorbed I don't know how many millions or billions of class lawsuits against it. And then Teva Pharmaceutics began to market the same generic product under even the same name, risperidone, risperidal. Also causes akithesia, absorbs with minerals, and generally might make people want to kill themselves and or be violent to others, like the rest of the typical and atypical pyramidal and extrapyramidal generic components of entire set of what people call antipsychotics. Um, when this is our wealth consolidation, we should not be too surprised that this is our medicine. Um, when Anneke Lucas, a ritual abuse survivor of those trafficking rings, um, went to do yoga classes for prisoners. She thought she would meet her offenders, but that's not exactly the people she met in prisons. Not talking about every country. She was working in the United States, I believe. Um, but these are people that simply did not have a way to bail themselves out. Um, now, that might seem like an esoteric, far out there. No, it's not. It's every single thing. It affects every single thing, and it's by design. Okay? People don't have realistic appraisal of what it actually takes to heal from trauma. It takes to change the world while we are getting enough rest. We need to fight to get enough rest and then change the world while we are getting enough rest. Okay? Rest is one of the most important things. Eastern martial arts learn to rest in action. Rest allows grounding of our nervous system. I was having somebody call me today, and I was lying in bed for 20 minutes, understanding that I'm way too tired to answer the phone, and I had to work an internal battle of inner expectations, of understanding that I need to surrender expecting from myself to function at this moment. Ponder about how that looks to the other side that doesn't know me, not having the time to think if that call is socially engineered and in what way. And I just lay there in paralysis for at least 20 minutes. And if that's not, helping, then the other side had eyesight problems. So I would actually have to do, I would actually have to speak. Um, and people used to think about these things as respect, and while that's not an outdated notion, we also have thick layers of neurodivergence where we have to be embodied, because it doesn't help anybody, it doesn't do anybody any good if somebody robotifyingly answers the phone. But extortion calls, those would be the only one not even benefiting, because they eventually they kill each other. Actually, in the capital of the Negev, there was organized crime before I moved to study there, and then the people told me that eventually the organized crime heads just killed one another. And that was the police wouldn't do anything. It was the organized heads, criminals that just killed one another. That's okay. That was. What can I say? That's the truth. There would be shots. People grew up in that area. They were used to hearing gunshots, and those people, these organized criminals or mafia, they don't always hit the right person. I mean, mafia is associated with Neptune, which is associated with blurriness and not necessarily with Neptune on the ascendant or midheaven. One could be mistaken for the one that did the crime when they actually didn't. Okay, it's both associated with the ability to evade things, according to Nicholas Stoyanovich, but also with surrendering the results. So mafia is ruled by Neptune, that also rules medicine, by the way. And this Neptune is, think about diagnosis. Okay. And the fact that basically it's a part of the ruler of mafia that is the cause that they would not. It's kind of like a veil of ignorance that they would just shoot people. It's not always the same person. In Gladio operation, that was used. Okay, It's like if it's a hit, we killed what a Sinwar. If it's a miss, yes, the mafia are shooting one another. When all of them are informants, but whatever. Okay, there's an old a joke that was running at the time of my parents. Okay, um, you lose or we win. Now, I can't. I think I've emphasized enough how big and weighty the matters at hand for any relational topic that arises right now. If a new relationship comes up at this time, it's not new, which means that those people are associated with people that are not new to one another. Okay, if I gave the example of a person who was talking to me, suddenly the consciousness of two people that I used to know enters his consciousness. It's beyond creepy. And, um, okay, and I see that that person, whomever they want to be in relationship with, they would have to defend themselves from a Nazi cult. How did that happen? My prediction, I always like to give the best credit to people, is that they tapped, or that like me, they tapped into something in their code, in their research, in their thinking, and they got targeted. That, of course, is the best assumption. Alternatively, they could be working for or with intelligence, not really knowing what that entails, which is a bigger division of dumbfuckery. Um, so, new relationships that come at this time are not new. Even if the person is new, the topic at hand is not new, or they may simply be associated with, or even sharing consciousness with people that are not new. Um, relationships that come back at this time are really it's cold case a deacon of Scorpio that's activated is what I'm saying, with the co-presence of Mercury and Mars, and the topics of sexual sovereignty in spirit and in matter, or Kundalini energy sovereignty. Okay, life energy. No, Kundalini is not cannibalism. The fact that, I don't know, Khazarian mafia practiced this as cannibalism is how they practiced it, but I mean, I don't know how they practiced it, but they definitely did not practice sexual sovereignty in spirit and in matter to every sex and gender, and that would make all of their teachings askew. That's just that comprises the entire known Western scientific endeavor, spiritual endeavor. And all the things they want to create unity around.